Howdy y'all, tonight I'm going to make some turkey meatballs in a tomato sauce and some gnocchi and some garlic butter, and these will be the ingredients that I'll need. For my turkey meatballs, I will need some ground turkey, and I'm using a 93% lean ground turkey. Now you can use any ground turkey you want to use, but I'm using this one because we're cutting down on some fat here. And for my tomato sauce, I am going to use this Campbell's Healthy Request tomato soup. It's a condensed soup, so it'll be nice and thick, but to give it an Italian flavoring, of course, I'm going to be cooking this in extra virgin olive oil. I will use some fresh cracked black pepper. I will using some salt, just a little bit, and I'm using this Hawaiian black salt. You can use your salt of your choice, but just because it's not as processed as the white sauce, the white salt, which has a lot of the nutrients removed, I'm going to use this one. Okay, so then I'm going to use some onion powder. Now it's important that it doesn't say onion salt on it. It's just onion powder, so it's just onion in there, no salt. And you can read the label and make sure. And I've got a little bit of Italian seasoning here. You can use some fresh basil if you wish, some fresh herbs to create your own seasoning. I'm going to use this one. This is pretty good. Now this does contain a little bit of salt. And this is a garlic powder, again, not a salt, a powder. That'll be to create my turkey meatballs. And to create my gnocchi or gnocchi, I am going to use these golden potatoes. Not this part, but I will use these golden potatoes. And this all just depends on how much of a little ball of dough you want to create your gnocchi with. And I've got a little assortment here that came in the bag, and we'll see what that makes once I've cooked them down and strain them out to little bits. Okay, this I will boil, or you could roast them in the oven, put them in the oven for 45 minutes or so, or just boil them, and then make sure you peel them afterwards. And I'll go through all those steps after. And to that, I will be adding some ground black pepper and a tiny bit of salt. I will add the yolk, not the whole egg, but the yolk of 2 large eggs. And the yolk, I'm not going to waste it. I could save it, or I could actually add it to my ground turkey meatballs. And normally when you make ground meatballs, you add some sort of breadcrumb or something to them. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make them like if they were little tiny little burgers, little balls. Okay, so the yolk of 2 large eggs. I'm going to need some flour to add into my potatoes to create my dough. And I will let you know how much of that flour I use, because it's really, you add a little bit at a time depending on how you want your dough. And you have to do it a little bit at a time so it doesn't become too hard. And you know, you want the dough for this gnocchi to be soft and fluffy. Okay, so for my garlic butter, of course I'm going to use butter or margarine, and of course fresh cloves of garlic, which I will chop into little pieces to give this butter, margarine, whichever one you use, lots of flavor. Now I didn't mention, but I will also top it off with some Parmesan cheese and some spinach that I might just throw in with the butter to cook it up a little bit. Instead of this, you could use sage, you could use basil. Sage is really the kind of the herb that you would use to make the garlic butter for to then saute your gnocchi in. But I'm going to use some spinach because I don't have any sage, and I just want something green in there to make it look pretty. And that's what I'm going to use, and as I go along, I will be letting you know how much of everything I will be adding. Here are my potatoes, and I've cut them up into little, not too small, just small pieces here, but not too small because I don't want them to fall apart in the water as I'm boiling them. Now, I said you could roast these in the oven. They'd probably get a better flavor, like a baked potato flavor, but I'm going to go ahead and boil them just because I don't feel like turning on my oven today. Okay, so these are going to go in some boiling water. And here they are in the water. Now the water was boiling a bit, but it cooled down once I stuck the potatoes in there. So I'm just going to let them come back to a boil, and then I'm going to bring down the temperature. Now normally you would add salt to your water, but I'm cutting down on salt on my food, so I'm not going to put any in there. I want to see how much I actually end up adding to my potatoes, so that's why I'm just going to skip this completely. Now, anyone would tell you that, yep, you do need to add salt, but I really don't see what the difference is. So if you figure that one out, you feel like you need to do that, then go ahead. I'm not going to do it. Okay, my potatoes are cooked, and I've strained them, removed them from the hot water, and now I'm going to just peel off. And so it's easy to peel them off, just like that, and take off all the peels. And then I'm going to mash them, and I will show you that step next. Alright, so I've already peeled and mashed a whole bunch of the potatoes, and I've just mashed them up with this masher that I have here, or you can use a potato masher or a rice shredder. You pass your potatoes through that and make it really nice and fine. Got a couple more. All I was doing was basically squeezing my potato, and the peel just comes right off. Now they were really hot when I was first doing them. They've cooled down some, so they're not so bad. You might want to wait till they cool off a little bit. And then I'm just breaking them up in my fingers, making sure they're not too big of pieces, and throwing them in there. Got one last one, mashing it up. You can mash it up with a spoon as well in a little bowl, and the peel will come right off. Now if you cooked them enough or baked them enough, the peel will separate really nicely. Now you don't want any of the peel in there, not in this particular recipe, so just make sure you get it all off. You don't want them little bits of peel in there. Okay, so just break it up. Sometimes you gotta use your hands, get them dirty. That's the best way to cook. Add some love in there. Okay, I'm gonna continue mashing it up, and I will be right back. All right, we're back, and I've mashed up all the little potatoes and to a consistency that I like. They're nice and finely mashed and fluffy. And again, I'm going to add the 2 egg yolks. This is without the egg whites. You want to separate the yolk from the white. And I'm just going to add the 2 egg yolks of 2 large eggs. Make sure you use large eggs. I'm going to use my finger to scrape some of this out. My fingers are going to get in there again, so I'm going to get egg on my hands again. There we go. And remember, the yolk's not the part that has to be cooked all that well anyway. Okay, so now I'm going to add some crushed black pepper, and that's really basically to taste. I'm going to add lots of it to add lots of flavor. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt. 3 grinds there, that's good enough. And that will get mixed in. You break those yolks there. There we go. Mix it in. Mix it in with my big old spoon. Nice if I use something smaller instead of this big old thing. Okay. Here's the part where I'm going to just use my hands. I'm going to scrape off as much as I can off of this. There you go. Got little holes in there, and I was kind of using that to strain the potatoes through there. Okay. And that worked really well, by the way. I actually used put a lot of the potatoes on there, and then I used another slotted spoon, and I squished, so then some of that came out of, and some of the rest of it came out of the other part of the other spoon that was on top. It wasn't very successful, but it kind of helped, and I ended up just using this and rubbing the potato on there and pushing it down so that it would come out on the other side in little drizzly bits. Okay, so now we're going to add some flour. This is just all-purpose flour. You can use rice flour, you can use semolina flour, and this is roughly about 1/2 cup, and I'm going to add as I need, but I'm going to start off with just a little bit of flour, because it's always best to start off with a little bit and add as you go. And I'm just going to fold it in to my potatoes until I form a dough. Get that in there, get that egg in there. And you just want to do that. And you're just folding it like that. Add more flour. So it's kind of basically not sticky anymore. It's basically what you want. So it doesn't like basically stick to your hands like you would any other dough that you're making. keep gently folding it. Okay, now I'm going to turn it onto a wooden board from here because I've sort of kind of formed a dough. I'm going to add a little bit more flour and I continue, and I'm going to roll it up into a little ball. All right, so I've got my potato dough here all put together, and I've rolled it up and with some flour here on this board, and I formed this long log. I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to roll half of it over and the other half over here. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to cut it in little slices. I'm going to put a little bit of flour on this little bit here. Little slices like that. See? Just like that. Little sausage bits. And you just cut it as you need it. I'm going to move that over a little bit. And put flour on top of these. And I used half a cup of flour when I was first doing it, as I told you, and then I said I would be adding as I need it. So I added another cup of flour, and I actually needed it some more, so I actually, not another cup, but half a cup. So altogether I ended up using about a cup of flour to make this dough. And it really basically is a potato dough is what it is. And then now I'm going to roll these little bits that I've cut into long, kind of finger wide little sausages. I'll do the same with the other two. Move that over a little bit, like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice these little sausage bits into like about 1-inch pieces, like so. Little 1-inch pieces, more or less. There we go. Okay, so then that's what you have. This is your little gnocchi piece. Now you could shape it however you want. You could roll it around in your fingers, make it a little long, you know, a little rounder, prettier looking thing. Or you could just leave them like little pillows like that. You can form them with your fingers like that also. And I kind of roll them around a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. Just because I think they look prettier when they're kind of roundish. You could do all kinds of things. There's a little tools to create little grooves in them and such, but hey, I'm doing it the old way, I guess, and a bit of my own way, actually. So that's all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep cutting these into 1-inch little pieces, and I'm dropping them into a little pan here like that. And then these will go into boiling water. Now, the water that I used to first boil the potatoes, I ended up using to boil up some linguine pasta. And then that same water, I'm going to continue using it. I added a little bit more water, of course, because it was going down. I'm going to continue to use it to boil these little guys, and I'll show you that next step in just a moment. I'm going to keep cutting some more of these. Now, whatever I don't use of my gnocchi dough, I'm going to wrap it up in some clear plastic wrap, put it in a little baggie, and make sure it's nice and sealed, and I am going to put it in the freezer so that when I want to make some gnocchi again, I can then let it defrost, and it'll be nice and easy to cut and ready to cook it up and prepare it for my family. And I'll be back. All right, here I've got some water that I've had heating up. It's boiled, and I need it to come up to a little bit more of a boil. But I've had to turn it down a couple of times because I wasn't quite ready to put the gnocchi or the gnocchi in. But here's a little bits of gnocchi that I made from half of that dough that I put together, and the other half I wrapped it up and put in the freezer. So now I've got these little gnocchi bits, and I will be dropping them into the boiling water. Okay, I brought the water up to a boil, and I've gone ahead and I've also lowered it a bit because I don't want the water to overflow. And I will drop a few of these paroles into the water. And you can grab a whole bunch with your hand and drop them in, but I'm doing one at a time. And do a little bit at a time. Don't drop, you know, the whole batch like that into the water. Drop a few at a time. And they take about a minute or so, maybe not even a minute. And the thing about this is that you don't want to also stack them on top of each other like I did, because I waited a while. Now they're kind of sticking to each other. So that's why you want to make sure that you flour them on the little rolls as you're cutting them also. And I think the best thing would be to use some of that semolina flour to give it a nice little texture on the outside as well. Okay, so then you're going to drop some of these in there. I'm not sure how many I've dropped, but I'm not even halfway into my little pan. So once you see them floating up on the water, that's when you're going to pull them out. And you can see, oh, well, not really. There was one that wanted to float up. There's one right there that kind of wants to float up. Okay, so you want to wait till they're all floating up on the top. That means they're done. And just gently pull them out and let them drain. And at this point, I would then drop them into the sauce that I'm going to make. But because I've got a bunch of them, I'm just going to put them in a little bowl over to the side so they can stay hot. But I want to make sure that I remove them out of the water. Now we'll keep doing this and do some more batches until I've got them all in this bowl. Alright, so in a small pan here, I've got some butter melting. I added a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to drop in some chopped up garlic, and that's about 2 teaspoons of chopped up garlic, about, more or less. That's going to melt around really nicely. Stir it around. I'm going to turn down the heat because I don't want the garlic to burn. I just wanted that butter to melt. Okay, I'm going to turn it down to a low. Okay, then I'm going to add the spinach. Now, like I said before, the best thing to add would be some sage. I didn't have sage, so another nice herb would have been nice, like a basil. But I didn't have that either. I didn't have anything fresh at this time. This is sort of a pantry raid, what I did in order to create this. So what I did have was some spinach, and I think that'll work just fine. It'll give it a pretty color, and it does have a nice flavor. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to take some of that pasta water. I'm going to pour that in here. That's about half a cup in there for my gnocchi. And at this point, I don't want to stir fry it. I just want to get the flavors all over. So I'm just going to move it around. And now because the pasta water had all that flour that came off from the gnocchis, it'll thicken up a little bit. So like I said, lower the temperature and just let it kind of reduce. And it'll get like a thick little bit of a gravy kind of. Not too much, but that's what's going to form. And then I'll plate this for you. Alright, I've got my gnocchi here, and I'm going to pour it into this pretty little pan. Pour all that sauce over it that's left over. Anything in the bottom of the pan there that got stuck, I'm just going to leave it there. And look at that. Pretty little gnocchi. They're all deformed. Alright, if you want to try this, you can change it up. Let me know what you would do to make your gnocchi, make it look a little bit better. This is my trial run, and I think I did a pretty good job, and I think it's going to be awesome. I've got some meatballs that I'm going to be serving this with up next, and then I will show you how that looks. Alright, so I'm going to make some turkey meatballs, and I've got some ground turkey. You can use ground chicken, or even some ground pork or ground beef. I'm using ground turkey. And to this I am going to add, because I needed to use 2 egg yolks to make some gnocchi, I had left over the whites of 2 eggs. Now I could put this in the refrigerator and store it and make it for breakfast, but I have a thing about, eggs, so once they're cracked, they gotta be cooked. So I'm gonna add the egg whites to this. And normally to make little meatballs you'd add some egg anyway, or at least the whole egg, but I'm just using the egg white. This will be nice and good for my husband to eat, because it'll be low in cholesterol, and I've already got the egg yolks in the gnocchi, so we don't need any more egg yolks in here, so that's a good idea to just use the whites. I'm going to add some garlic powder, and you're just going to add to flavor some powdered onion. I'm going to add some black salt. You could use like that pink salt, just because it still has a lot of the nutrients in it. Some crushed black pepper. I should have used a lot less salt. I wasn't paying attention. Okay, some of that. And I've got some Italian seasoning, and I'm going to pour that in. That's just some dried, let's see, oregano, I believe, and basil. I can smell the oregano. Let's see. Well, yep. It's got marjoram, thyme, rosemary, savory, whatever that is, sage, oregano, and basil. Little dried bits in there. So that's what I'm adding in there. You can just add as much as you want. I like to sprinkle some on top of my food at the end. So that's what I'm going to put together. I'm going to mix this up together. Let me get a spoon just for that. Oops, I have some spinach on this one. Okay, so I don't want to work the turkey too much because it's already kind of like, I don't know, kind of gummy. I'm not too crazy about ground turkey, but I wanted to make turkey meatballs. It tastes great once you've made it, but it just seems like it's so squishy and funny. It's not like, you know, ground beef. I mean, like if you were to work ground beef a little bit too much, it kind of gets this texture and it's not fun. So that's kind of what I think that ground turkey has. I don't know, maybe it's just the one that I'm buying. Maybe because it's not like all white meat, and it's, you know, dark meat in there, and so that's why it has a different bit of a texture. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to form little meatballs, and what you would do is you would add some breadcrumbs. A lot of people add breadcrumbs. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make these like little tiny burgers, but it really needs the breadcrumbs, I think. I just don't want to add any more bread and stuff into my food because I'm already using some linguine pasta. I am using this Organics whole wheat linguine, and I've already made that because I needed the water to be ready for when I make some gnocchi. So I'm using this. This is a heart-healthy pasta that I'm making for my husband. But I don't want to add any more breads or starch or anything like that to my meal, so I'm keeping it like that. I've got some grated Parmesan cheese here, and I'm going to add that to it. This is fun to add after, but I'm going to add some before and work it in. And now you can add a whole bunch of it, and that'll kind of be like adding the breadcrumbs, because at this point it's just like really wet and gooey, and of course you're going to be like rolling around the yolks in your hand. So you're just going to take it and form little meatballs. That's all you're going to do. As you can see, it's like really sticky. That's why I don't really like working with a ground turkey. But I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put this in a pan with some olive oil, and I'm going to be making the little meatballs as I drop them in. And I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, here I've got my hot oil where I'm going to be doing my meatballs. This is extra virgin olive oil, and I threw a little piece in there just to kind of make sure it was already nice and hot. And I've got it at a sort of a medium-high temperature. My pan had already gotten really hot, so I didn't need to add any more heat to it. And I'm going to form these little meatballs in my hand and drop them into the oil, like so. And I'm going to keep doing that until I've got a whole bunch of them in there. And I will return. Sorry. Alright, here I've got my little turkey patty, meatballs, little burgers, whatever you want to call them, cooking up. As you can see, the meat is still red on some of these, so I got to let that cook, and I've turned them around so the other side can cook, and I can just flip them over and do the part that looks pink. I'm going to reach under there because even the middle seems to want to stick. There's some nasty ones in there. And I want to get them browned a little bit before I add the rest of my ingredients. Switch that over here. Well, that's a little brown one. Let's get you out of the way. I'm going to turn these over. Let's stick this one in the middle here. I don't want to move them around too much because I don't want to break them up. And it's kind of hard to do that with just one hand. Okay. Let me let them brown a little bit more, and I'll be back. Alright, so they're getting browned, and if you're wondering how much time has gone by, I had them here for about 2 minutes before I came over and decided that I needed to turn them around, and I've had another couple of minutes going here, and that's about 4 minutes of cooking this turkey meat. Now, some of them are kind of chunky and are going to need a little bit more to cook, but I'm going to add some liquids to this, and I wanted them to brown because I didn't want them to then like fall apart on me. And if they did, that's okay, because then I would have just a ground turkey sauce, and that's fine, no problem. And if some of these are a little too big and you feel like they're not going to cook as fast as the other ones, you want to try to make them all the same size. But if you've done that, just cut them in half, just like that. Okay, so I have some still some of this pasta water, and I do need to add some liquid to this. So I'm going to use a ladle full of that in there. Okay, move this back so we don't get that vapor or steam. Move it around. That's just to get all those little bits on the bottom off the pan. See? Oops, sorry, you're not seeing. Here we go. You can see that that's coming off. Okay, as you can see, that evaporated really, really quickly. I'm going to add another ladleful. There we go. I don't want to cool off the pan too much. So also I want to add some a little bit more liquid, but I want to add a little bit of flavor. So I'm going to use some chicken reduced salt. This is a chicken broth. That's what I'm using, and I probably poured about a cup in there already. I wasn't really paying attention. Here we go. About a cup. Just add as much as you think you need on there. But eventually I want the liquid to completely cover these little meatballs. Now I'm going to add the can of the to a Healthy Request tomato soup. That's what I'm going to use. You can use a pasta sauce if you want, or you can use some crushed tomatoes. I'm going to add a little bit more of this chicken broth in there. Crushed tomatoes, however you want to make your sauce. I'm using this at this time because I want to see how that comes out. Just going to stir it around, get it to mix in with the rest of these, the rest of the liquid. I'm going to add a little bit of this pasta water into the can of tomato soup. Shake it around. I'm going to make sure I get all that tomato there on the bottom there. Pour that in. There's still a little bit in there. There we go. That was it. Good. All right, that helped. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to let this simmer a bit so my meatballs are all nice and cooked. And then I'm going to add some linguine pasta in there, and I'll be back. Cover it up. Sorry. Cover this up. Lower your temperature down to a simmer, and give it about 5-7 minutes. All right, 5 minutes have gone by, and I've uncovered my meatballs, and now I'm going to leave it uncovered, and I've raised the heat up almost to between medium and high. I want it to boil up again, and I want this to sort of reduce a little bit, and I'm going to add now some of the linguine pasta that I made. There you go. As you can see, it's not a thick sauce. It's almost soupy. That's okay. I'm all right with that. I just wanted to give my meal some flavor. And I made a lot of this pasta, and I really should have just made half the packet. So what I'm going to do with the rest of it is I'm going to pack it in little freezer bags and freeze it, because look how much I have. It's a big bowl. I have a ton of it. Here's my hand to show you the comparison. There's a lot. So I really probably should just use a third of the bag. Well, I'm going to put a little bit more, because remember, we also have the gnocchi to put into on our plate, so I think that's enough. The rest of this pasta, I'm going to bag it in separate little bags, freeze it, and I'll have some pasta ready. Just a quick little boil, and it'll be done. I don't have to wait for it to cook, just heat up. Oh, look at that. That looks so good. I'm going to leave this heat up a little bit. And I've tasted it, and it needs a little bit more of garlic powder and some of the Italian seasoning. So that's what I'm going to add. So you're just going to taste it and season to taste. And then you could add some grated Parmigiano on top of this. Or you could add some mozzarella cheese in here. I've got both, so I think I'm going to add a little bit of both. And then I'm going to let the mozzarella melt in there while it's cooking. So as I said, I raised up the temperature. So it comes back to a little bit of a little boil in here. It gets really nice and hot, and heats up my linguine again, because it had been done and cooled off for a bit so that it wouldn't stick. And so I need to heat that up and make sure it's nice and hot when I serve it, and then I will show you all of that. All right, so I've completed my turkey meatballs in a tomato sauce, and I've actually added some whole wheat linguine pasta on there also, and I made some gnocchi and some garlic butter, and I added some spinach to that. Here is my plate, and as you can see, I've got my linguine and my turkey meatballs and the gnocchi that I made. I keep saying gnocchi, but I believe it's gnocchi. And I've got some shredded mozzarella. This is a low moisture part skim mozzarella, and you can use that or any of the other cheese that you like, or a whole fat cheese, it doesn't matter. But for me, I'm using this one for now. And I also had some of this Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Now I did have some shredded or grated Parmesan that you saw earlier that I used when I made my meatballs. But then I remembered that I had this really nice Parmigiano cheese that cost me quite a bit. So I want to make sure I use it up. So I went ahead and I grated a little bit into this little dish. And I'm going to use that Parmesan cheese on my gnocchi. And I'm going to use the mozzarella. Now the mozzarella cheese, I could have added it to my spaghetti and meatballs while it was cooking, so it could have melted in there. But I thought it looked prettier if I topped it off like this. But I'm going to go ahead and add some in there right now while it's still hot in the pan. So that this melts, so when my husband and my son eat from it, it will string along and be yummy looking. Look at that. Look at that gnocchi. It's so pretty. It's not the best. It's not the best shaped. I could have done a better job if I'd have done it a little bit more carefully, a little slower. Used maybe some semolina flour in the end, and make sure that I had them spread out, not laying on top of each other, and not waited so long before I put them in the water. So you want to do that as you're cutting them, be dropping them in the water, pulling them out, cut some more, drop it in the water. That way you don't get them to like all sticky. And of course the little bit of flour that's on them kind of forms this little bit of a little sauce with the butter, the melted butter, and of course the garlic gives it an awesome flavor. Now if you have a link or your favorite recipe for gnocchi or some turkey meatballs, a better idea than I did, or just a different idea, go ahead and link it down in the comments, or just let me know if you tried it the way that I made it and if you enjoyed it or not, or what changes would you make. I'm here to share my recipes, and I'm more than happy to have you share your ideas and your recipes. We're both learning as I'm doing this, learning along as I cook, because I'm making heart healthy meals. And this is a weekend, so it's not quite as heart healthy because I am using some pasta and then some potato here. But I'm trying to avoid as much fat and some salts, actually. So this is going to be pretty good. And let me know what you think, and then like my video, and please subscribe to my channel. And enjoy!